T.O. Blaze.
Hey there, this is T.O. bringing another Kerbal Space Program video. In this video, I'm going to build a space station using all the different launch methods I can think of. So straight off the bat, we got our traditional KSP rocket where the first, second stage, all the different stages are not recoverable. The whole point of this rocket is to put a payload into orbit. So that's what it's done. Payload being the mobile processing lab and a few little parts for the core of our station. So I'm going to go ahead and put the station on the orbit that I want with the zero inclination and a nice round circular orbit. Now it's time for launch number 2. This is a semi-conventional rocket, although the first stage is recoverable, SpaceX style. So there you see my payload just circularized at the last moment, so I can stay within physics range of my first stage, which is going to land safely in the ocean here and not explode and will be recovered later. And go ahead and dock my second payload with the station itself. This is going to be just some decouplers, not some decouplers, docking ports in different orientations so that I could attach different things like a truss section for some solar panels and so forth. Here's my third launch. This is going to be my take on the space shuttle. So I've got my two SRBs on the side of two small tanks instead of one large tank under the vehicle. This is just, in my mind, so much simpler and easier to fly in KSP. It's not as authentic, but gets the job done. And the orbiter itself isn't as long as it probably should have been, but it's plenty long for the payload I'm sending up, the third payload being some crew quarters for the station. So benefit of using that design, by the way, with the boosters on the sides is those vector engines can stay pointed towards the center of mass of the orbiter, which is nice. You can use them throughout the mission. So there you see, I didn't have enough power on the third payload, so I went a little closer with the orbiter and I used my engineer and EVA construction to attach a battery so that it would have a little more power. And there's a little tug that I used to put the third module into position. I'm going to go ahead and redock it with this shuttle here, the orbiter. I'm going to go ahead and deorbit. And I was, I guess, being lazy, didn't even try to aim for the KSC because I typically can't hit it on the first try anyway, and I was trying to get on with the video, but I did land it safely, which is all that matters. So next launch method is an SSTO. So I'm done with vertical launches. Now I'll get into some horizontal launches, and an SSTO is the way to go. So I use the same calculations that I showed in a previous video where I designed an SSTO for basically start with a payload, and you can use different calculations to figure out how much liquid fuel you'll need for the air breathing engines. And once you switch to closed cycle, you know how much liquid fuel and oxidizer you'll need and so forth, so to design the SSTOs. Now that I've gotten the hang of SSTOs, they're a lot of fun, so recommend building them if you haven't already. There I've got my rendezvous with the space station. Let's open up the cargo bay. And actually this time I will dock with the front of the station. I've got the crew on board, which I plan to leave on the station. But here's the bottom section that'll allow me to start attaching different craft. I'll have this section as well as a second with the small docking ports. That's the medium-sized docking ports you just saw. This is the truss for the truss segment for the solar panels. So now I can go ahead and put the solar panels into position. As you can see, I'm using RCS for all of these components. I'm not even using the normal, what is it, 4 directional or 2 directional RCS thrusters. I'm using 1 directional. I guess you could say 2 direction, back and forth. So that's why you see me burning 1 direction and then slowing down and then changing orientation, etc. This launch was a lot of fun. If you didn't see my previous video, I designed this heavy payload air launch cargo plane. Well, this is an air launched rocket. So just to be different from the SSTO, it's an air launched rocket. And in theory, that plane would go back and land at the KSC, but I don't have any mods installed. And on vanilla, you can't control 2 crafts once they get out of physics range of each other. So that space plane was uncrewed anyway. So it went back and landed on the KSC. We'll see. The payload rocketed itself into orbit, and we're going to go ahead and rendezvous with the station. The payload is an escape pod for the crew. So now I can ethically leave the crew on the station, and I can send that SSTO back down to the surface. I didn't want to leave the crew on the station without some kind of escape system. So just kind of trying to be authentic, I suppose. So I unloaded some fuel and transferred some things, and now the SSTO was ready to head back to the surface of Kerbin and hopefully land on at the KSC. And the SSTO design definitely needs some tweaks. It's all the weight being towards the rear, it made it so that the air-breathing engines didn't get any air and didn't have any thrust, and it was just a pain in the butt. But once it got to low enough altitude, I fired them up in closed cycle and reoriented myself. So what's the launch method I haven't tried yet? Let's reuse an SSTO. So I've launched with an SSTO from the spaceplane hangar, but I've never reused an SSTO. Actually, I've never done it in my game at all. So this is the first time I've done it, and I'll go ahead and show you how I managed to do it. That little grabbing arm wasn't grabbing the nose cone very well, so I had to kind of catch it sideways. But I'm going to go ahead and refuel all the tanks on the SSTO with my little refueling rig there. And go ahead and send it back to the Space Center, to the Vehicle Assembly Building, or the spaceplane hangar. Now let's reorient my plane. I had to kind of push it around trying to grab it there. Let's see if I can get it back centered, or mostly centered on the runway. It's got plenty of thrust, so I'm not worried about, I do want to back up a hair, but I'm not going to try to turn around 180 degrees. I can use what's left of the runway in front of me and turn around once I'm in the air. But let's go ahead and lower the little ramp and show you the little loading tugs that I made. These, I don't like the diameter of these cargo bays are nice, except for the drivable surface is not very wide, so you kind of have to use these smaller wheels, I find, and they don't have a lot of weight capacity. So most of the wheels got busted. That's why you see me kind of shimmying, trying to get out of the cargo bay. And I'm going to go ahead and add a second payload since I've got the space, and I'm using the EVA construction to position a docking port in the cargo bay, and I'm attaching the cargo to that. Then I detach from the little tug, from the little material handler. Now you see I've got two hinges that I like to use that are 180 degrees away from each other, and when you extend them together, they extend pretty much straight up into the air, which is nice. So let's go ahead and take off. And like I said, I can change my orientation once I'm in the air. As long as I'm not going too fast, it handles really, really well. And I can go ahead and turn and face the spin of the planet and get back up into orbit, same as last time. I think this video, this piece of the video, rather, this clip, is going to run at a slightly lower speed. I was really pleased with how reusing this SSTO turned out. I'd never done this before. Even though the design of the SSTO wasn't perfect, the tugs weren't perfect, the payloads were probably too heavy, all that crap, it still came out pretty it worked. That's all that matters. So I'm going to get this up into orbit, and same as the second to last launch, you'll see I just open the bays and send my little payloads to attach to the space station. And this is in my this is not in my career mode, this is in my sandbox mode, which is why I'm spending all these credits. Sometimes the vehicles are more expensive than they ever need to be, but in sandbox mode you can do stuff like that. It's just about having fun and seeing what kind of things you can design and come up with, which is nice. So let me match the inclination of the station and get myself a rendezvous set up. There you see I'm at the descending node, gonna get my inclination matched. Basic, typical rendezvous. I've done this countless times, and I remember this probably being probably the second huge challenge that I faced in KSP. Getting to orbit is obviously the first challenge, but once you're in orbit, it's tough to do your first rendezvous. I don't know if you just heard my dog snore. I've got two pooches chilling next to me. So there, I've got my rendezvous set up. Let's get back to the space station. Slap on these last two parts, shall I say, because I believe this is going to be the last launch. This is the last unique launch method that I can think of. If you could think of anything else that I didn't do or show you in the video, feel free to post in the comments. I'm curious if there's different launch methods other folks have used that I have not used in this video. There is one launch method. I'll save it for the end, for the next bit. That you'll see. If you've played KSP, you know you'll not be surprised by this last launch demonstration, shall I say. But let's go ahead and get these last two payloads attached. This is a space tug that's going to stay docked with the station, so I don't have a Canadarm or anything like that. I've got this tug. And again, it's only bidirectional on those thrusters because I plan to point it to the center of mass of whatever payload it's attached to. In this case, the next docking port section. So the docking port segment doesn't have any, doesn't have a probe, doesn't have any RCS or anything like that. So I'll use the tug and demonstrate its function. So I'll go ahead and detach that docking port, the smallest docking port, and attach this whole thing to the station. And if you only use those bidirectional thrusters pointed at the center of mass, you can use it basically like a normal engine. So it's got the you can feather it like an RCS. There you see I'm getting rid of some space debris. I had to attach that to the docking port earlier, but go ahead and get rid of some debris. Go back to the station. But yeah, the little tug is effective. I like having something like that on board. So for future missions, for videos that I send something, a payload that doesn't have the ability to control itself, I can use a little space tug like that. And I'll go ahead and attach it now to the bottom section of the station, so I can attach 2 medium docking ports and 2 small docking ports to this station. So nice to have the the options. Sometimes you'll design really small vehicles, and that small docking port makes the most sense. The medium docking port is much stronger, and it's generally a better design choice, but the small one sometimes I'll use. So that's what these 2 ports will be for. And they also serve as an airlock. You can send Kerbals in and out of EVA from those ports, which is kind of nice as well. So I'll reattach the tug to a different spot on the station, to a spot that's closer to the center of it, where a normal vehicle won't have access to. It'll be too bulky. This is nice and small. So, and that's the station. Let me deorbit that other little space tug that I sent from a previous mission. Let's also deorbit the Ssto. This time I'm not even going to try to land on the Space Center, I don't think. I'll just, if I can touch it down anywhere, I'll be satisfied at this point. It took me lots of tries to get it to hit the KSC and land correctly. And once I got to the KSC, it only took 1 try to land, but to get there was a challenge. So the SSTOs are tough. You have to balance the weight distribution very well. You've got to have enough weight towards the front so that it doesn't pitch to the to facing retrograde whenever you're coming in, like it wants to do. There you see it keeps flipping because the engine's so heavy. You got a lot of engines in the back. That's a lot of mass. So generally, it's a good idea to have a separate, smaller fuel tanks in the front that you can transfer fuel. And I think in this case, I actually did it backwards. I transferred all the fuel to the rear, where I should have transferred the fuel to the front. But I didn't have any tanks in the front anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered. But it's unmanned. I'm not too concerned, so let's just crash this thing into the ocean. I mean, land safely, of course. And I'll show you my last surprise. So the station itself is done. I've got some other little tiny modules that I may send up in future videos just for fun. But for this video, the station is done. So the only other launch method that I could think of that I didn't show you in the video is coming up in a second. Let's crash this darn thing into the ocean. Oh, yeah, most of it survived, except the engines, the expensive bits. Those are sinking. And here you see my last launch method, which is send everything up all at once. This is the way I really used to build stations, especially in sandbox where the cost doesn't matter. You just add more boosters. So I just put the whole station up in 1 launch. And let's go ahead and hop out and inspect the station, see how it looks. If you guys like the station design, appreciate you guys tuning in. If you like the video, please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, do that. If you want to leave a comment, I love responding to comments. And if you have any questions, I will answer as quickly as I can. I appreciate you tuning in. Hope to see you guys in the next video.